They found him by accident. For a long time, most people had thought humans were only a story. The archivists kept records. They kept maps and songs and old images. They studied empty worlds. They read names carved on the sides of rusted ships. They called those names legends. Then a small light blinked on an old sensor. A single heartbeat sang through the silence. The rescue ship came with careful engines and soft steps. The crew moved like people who knew how to hold their breath. They expected a relic. They expected bones or a machine that might still hum. When they opened the last hatch, a thin human lay curled in dust. He was smaller than the pictures in the archives. He looked like someone who had been waiting a very long time. They lifted him gently. Dust fell from his hair. His skin was dark with old sun and older storms. When he breathed, the machine read the rhythm and wrote a small number on the screen, the first true sign in centuries. People on the ship did not clap. They did not cheer. They stood very still. The sound of the ship felt loud after so much silence. He had a scrap of paper in his hand. The writing on it was faded, but one word stayed clear. It was a name. He woke and his eyes found the faces around him. He tried to speak. His voice came out like someone who had forgotten how to use words. It was hoarse and small. Still, he said a single word that all the machines recognized, though the language was old: home. For the archivists, that one word made a map of memory open in their heads. They all had rules. They were librarians of the sky. They kept balance. They did not seek trouble. They did not start wars. But for centuries their voices had watered a single seed: if one returns, the truth must be followed. The founders had written the vow in a thin book. The vow was simple, almost foolish: find one, search for all. The captain read the scrap of paper again. He looked at the charts that showed ruined worlds and scattered life beacons. The numbers were like road signs from a lost road. The captain could see the cost in fuel and lives. He could see the maps that cut through dangerous zones. He could see the warnings about hunter fleets and greedy coalitions. Still, he felt something in his chest that the rules could not touch. He closed the book of rules and said, "We go." Not everyone agreed. Some on the bridge whispered. The engineer clicked a key and drew a red line across the map where they should not go. The navigator said the route was risky. The historian said it was impossible to know if the scrap of paper pointed to more humans or to a trap. People argued in low voices. They argued with fear in their throats. The captain listened. Then he put his hand on the small human's shoulder. The human blinked and smiled without teeth. That small gesture changed a few minds. It made some people remember why their founders had once taken seeds across the dark. The ship pulled away from the quiet ruin. It moved like a patient animal. The engines hummed and the stars slid by like a river. Inside, the crew passed the paper from hand to hand. They read the single word and imagined green trees and warm rain. They imagined voices that had stopped for so long. But the ship's instruments kept finding problems. Old politics stirred. A message crossed the net: an outer coalition wanted details. Another channel carried a sharp voice: someone who thought life should be caged and tested. The rescue team turned off the public channels. They moved the small human to a safe room. They wrapped him in a blanket that smelled like paper and oil. At night, the ship did not sleep. People went to the safe room and sat by the bed. They listened to the human's breathing. One young crew member touched the scrap of paper and read the name again. He felt his throat tighten. The human dreamed and smiled. In the dream, the human ran in a field. There was a sound like rain. He woke and said one more word that no machine needed to translate: he hummed. The tune was sad and small. It was a tune older than the ship. The sound spread like a small light. Someone on the bridge sent a quiet signal. It was not meant to be seen by everyone. The signal was short and sharp. It left no trace in the public logs. It said only this: the human was found and the captain had chosen to search. The person who sent it wanted help. Or maybe they wanted to stop the ship. The captain saw the line of code and frowned. He could not tell who had sent it. For a moment the bridge felt colder than space. The crew argued again in whispers. The captain thought of the vow. He thought of all the empty names in the archives. He thought of the single heartbeat that had woken them. He had read the founder's words: if one returns, all shall be sought. He thought of the small human asleep under the thin blanket and the scrap of paper that said only one word: home. The captain set a course that bent away from safety. He told the navigator to plot the nearest coordinate on the old map. The ship answered with a slow, steady beep. Outside, the stars moved. Inside, lights dimmed and the hum of the engines filled the quiet. The small human turned in his sleep and whispered the name of a person he had once known. The captain heard it and did not ask what it meant. He simply said to the bridge, "We go." As the ship jumped into a thin lane between the stars, a last line of code flickered across the captain's screen. It was short, almost a whisper. A transmission had been sent from inside the ship before their jump. It left a single mark on their ledger. The captain read it twice. He watched the screen go blank. Then he turned and watched the small human breathe. The screen cut to black. A single heartbeat sounded, steady and loud, like a promise. The words appeared in white on the dark: they saved one. They vowed to return for them all. The ship moved toward the unknown. The ship carried silence for 3 days. The human slept often, his body thin, his breath shallow but steady. The crew checked on him in turns. They brought water, soft food, and warmth. Sometimes he woke and looked around, confused. He did not understand their words, but he listened. He pointed at objects, touched walls, and hummed the same low tune each night before sleep. The sound filled the ship with something that felt alive. The archivists wanted answers. They wanted to know how he had survived. They wanted to know if others lived. In the meeting hall, they spread the old maps across the table. The maps showed ruins, broken signals, empty colonies, and dark stars. Most of the marks on those maps were silent graves. But now, because of the human, the marks felt different. They felt like doors waiting to open. The captain stood over the maps. He spoke in a quiet voice. If one survived, more could. We have a duty. Some nodded. Some frowned. The engineer tapped the fuel logs. We do not have enough supplies for a long search. Every jump costs us. If we follow these maps, we will burn through everything. And if the coalition hears of this, they will come. The coalition. That word made the room heavy. The coalition did not like risk. They did not like secrets. They hated surprises. And above all, they feared humans. For them, the human race was dangerous. History, a story of war, ambition, and fire. If the coalition learned about the survivor, they would not send help. They would send hunters. Still, the captain did not change his mind. He looked at the scrap of paper the human carried. The paper was old, cracked, but one name could still be read. A name written by human hands long ago. The captain pressed it flat and whispered, "A vow is a vow." That night, the rescued human did something unexpected. He left his bed, weak but determined, and walked to the workshop. The crew followed, worried he would fall. Instead, he studied the machines. He ran his fingers along wires, gears, and pipes. He tapped one panel, frowned, and shook his head. Then he picked up a broken tool and began to adjust the coolant valves. His hands moved quickly, like someone who had done this before. When he finished, the machine hummed smoother. The cooling system worked better than it had in months. The engineer blinked in shock. He understood it: she whispered. He just knew. The captain smiled. Resourceful, he said. That is what they were. From that moment, some of the crew began to see the human differently. Not just as a relic, but as a partner. A spark of something practical, something useful, something alive. But the danger was already growing. On the fourth day, a message reached them. It came on the private channel reserved for the coalition. A cold, sharp voice filled the bridge. Report at once. We have detected movement from your sector. Rumors say you carry something unusual. This must be explained. The crew looked at one another. Nobody moved. The captain did not answer. He shut down the channel. Silence filled the bridge again. The navigator whispered, if they know, they will come. The captain said, then we will be ready. But deep inside, the captain worried. Because he remembered the secret signal sent from their ship. Someone on board had already betrayed them. Someone had already told the coalition the truth. The archivists kept searching the humans' belongings. In his pocket, they found a small recorder, cracked and nearly dead. After careful work, the engineer restored it enough to play a few fragments. A voice filled the room. It was human, warm, and tired. It spoke in broken phrases, wait, if you hear, come quietly, then static. The rescued human listened and closed his eyes. A tear ran down his face. He touched the device with trembling fingers. He whispered a word, the same word again and again. Nobody understood it, but they understood the meaning. There were more. He knew it. He felt it. The captain made his choice. We follow the signal. First to the nearest ruin. If others live, we will find them. The ship set its course. The stars bent, and the engines shook. The crew worked in silence, each one carrying a mix of fear and hope. They passed through a dead system filled with broken satellites. They crossed a graveyard of ships that floated in silence like frozen whales. The rescued human pressed his face to the glass, his eyes wide with memory or pain. And then, the alarms began. The hunter fleet had found them. Red lights burned across the bridge. The navigator shouted coordinates. The engineer cursed and fought with the engines. The hunters came fast, dark ships with sharp edges. They carried no flags, only weapons. The coalition had sent them. The traitor's message had reached its target. The captain tightened his jaw. Shields up. Hold steady. The rescued human stood in the corner, weak but alert. His hand gripped the paper scrap. His eyes were wide, but his mouth was firm. He whispered something to himself, a word the crew could not hear. A word meant only for him. The hunter fleet spread out, circling the archivists like wolves. The captain knew they could not win in open battle. They had to escape, or everything the vow, the rescue, the hope would end before it truly began. The screen faded to black. A heartbeat sounded once. Then a second time, louder. Words appeared. They are not safe. The hunters are here. The hunters came fast. Black ships with sharp wings cut across the stars. Their engines burned red, and their weapons glowed like teeth. They did not call, they did not speak, they only moved to kill. The archivist ship trembled as the alarms cried out. The crew ran to stations, their voices quick and sharp. Shields up, the captain shouted. Shields failing, the engineer answered. Sparks fell from the ceiling as the first blast hit. The rescued human held onto the railing. He was weak, but his eyes burned. He had seen this before. Not these ships, not these hunters, but this feeling, the hunt, the chase, the fight for life. His hands shook, but he did not hide. The hunters circled, firing in bursts, testing the archivist ship like wolves test prey. Each strike made the ship groan. The crew tried to return fire, but their weapons were smaller, weaker. The archivists were keepers, not warriors. They could defend, not destroy. The captain's voice was steady. Hold the line. We need time. Find us a gap. The navigator scanned the map. His hands flew across the console. There is a shadow lane between the moons. Narrow, dangerous. If we miss the path, we crash. The captain nodded. Then we do not miss. The hunters pressed harder. One blast tore through the outer hull. Air rushed out. A crew member screamed as the vacuum pulled at him. The rescued human, with no training, leapt forward. He grabbed a loose cable, pulled hard, and slammed it across the breach. The metal sparked, fused, and sealed. The crew stared. The human gasped, weak and pale, but alive. Resourceful, the engineer whispered again. The captain gave a small nod. Remember this moment. Humanity survives because it refuses to stop. But the hunters were not finished. They fired again, harder, faster. The archivist ship shook. The shields flickered, and the lights dimmed. One more hit, and they would be dust. Then the betrayal was revealed. A hidden console lit up on the lower deck. A signal pulsed out, guiding the hunters, showing them every move of the archivist ship. The captain's eyes narrowed. Find it? Shut it down. The crew ran, searching. The signal came from inside. Someone on board had betrayed them. Someone wanted the human gone. At last, the betrayer stood revealed. It was an officer, a quiet man who had served for years without question. He stood by the console, hands still on the key. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with anger. You do not understand, he said. Humans are not hope. They are fire. They will burn us all again. The captain stepped forward, voice calm but heavy. You broke your oath. You sold us to killers. I saved us, the officer shouted. If the coalition controls the human, we live. If you keep him, we all die. The vow is madness. The crew stared. Some nodded, afraid he might be right. Others shook their heads, furious at his fear. The rescued human did not understand the words, but he saw the faces. He knew betrayal when he saw it. His grip on the paper scrap tightened. His lips moved. He whispered one word, no. The captain raised his hand. Enough. We choose the vow. Even if it costs us all. The officer laughed bitterly. Then you choose death. He struck the console again. The hunters closed in. The crew dragged him away, but the damage was done. The hunters fired one more blast. The archivist ship shuddered, alarm screaming. The shields died. The navigator cried out. We cannot hold much longer. The captain made the hardest choice. Detach the escort. Sacrifice it. Draw the hunters away. The escort vessel was small, old, but it still had engines. Its crew knew what the order meant. They did not argue. They launched, burning bright, drawing the hunters after them. The archivist ship turned into the shadow lane, slipping between the moons. From the window, the rescued human watched. The escort fought bravely, its lights flashing in the dark. Then, one by one, the lights went out. The hunters tore it apart. The ship died, and the stars swallowed the pieces. Silence filled the bridge. The captain closed his eyes. They gave us time. We will not waste it. The rescued human touched the glass with his hand. He did not know their names, but he felt the cost. His eyes filled with tears. For the first time, he understood that these strangers had chosen to suffer for him. The archivist ship slipped into the shadows and escaped. The hunters roared past, chasing ghosts. The engines hummed, weak but alive. The crew sat in silence, mourning and breathing. Then, a sound broke the quiet. A signal. Not from the hunters. Not from the coalition. From the map itself. The engineer played it. A human voice came through the static, rough but clear. If you come quietly. The rescued human's head snapped up. His lips parted. He whispered something in his own tongue. A name. A name he knew. The crew stared at him. The captain leaned forward. Is it another? Do they live? The human nodded, tears rolling down his cheeks. He whispered the name again, stronger this time. The crew did not know the meaning. But they knew what it meant. The captain straightened. His voice was low, steady. Plot the course. We are not done. The screen faded to black. A slow heartbeat echoed 3 times. Words appeared. There is more than one. The search begins. The archivist ship drifted in silence. The hunters were gone, but the scars remained. Burn marks covered the hull. The shields were weak. The crew was tired, but their eyes stayed on the new signal. It was a human voice, faint but alive. If you come quietly. The captain ordered a course to the ruined world. The map showed it was once green, once full of water and forests. Now it was dust and stone. Satellites hung broken in orbit, turning slowly like old ghosts. The closer they came, the heavier the silence grew. The rescued human pressed his forehead to the glass. His hands shook. He whispered a name again and again, the same name he had spoken when the signal played. The crew did not understand, but they knew it was someone he hoped to find. They entered orbit. Below them, the planet lay gray and scarred. Cities were nothing but skeletons. Towers lay broken like teeth. Roads cut across the land, but all of them ended in rubble. The captain spoke. We land near the source. Quietly. No signals. No lights. The ship descended into clouds of ash. The air was heavy, poisoned, but the suits could hold it back. The landing touched down in silence. Dust rose around them, thick as fog. The rescue team stepped out. Their boots sank into black soil. The wind moaned through hollow streets. Every wall carried marks of fire. The rescued human walked with them, weak but determined. He touched the ruins with trembling fingers, as if he remembered. They moved carefully, following the faint signal. It led them through broken buildings, past shadows of lives long gone. A child's toy lay in the dirt. A rusted swing hung from a chain. The rescued human bent down, picked up the toy, and held it to his chest. His lips moved, whispering words none of them knew. The signal grew stronger. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Finally, they reached an old shelter door. It was sealed shut, buried in dust. The engineer scanned it. It's locked. Code unknown. Metal is fused. We cannot open it without heavy fire. The captain frowned. Heavy fire would wake every watcher in orbit. They needed quiet. But the door refused to move. Then the rescued human stepped forward. He pressed his hands against the door. His eyes searched the frame. He touched a panel half buried in dirt, wiped it clean, and tapped 3 times. Nothing. He tried again, slower, then hummed the tune he always hummed at night. Something clicked. The old lock shivered. With a groan, the door slid open a hand's width. Dust fell. The crew stared in silence. Resourceful, the engineer whispered for the 3rd time. Inside the dark shelter, eyes blinked. Human eyes. Dozens of them. Thin faces, dirty, tired, but alive. A woman stepped forward, holding a child. Her voice cracked but carried hope. You came. The rescued human cried out. He rushed forward, weak legs almost failing, but his arms strong enough to hold the woman. They spoke quickly in their language, voices broken but full of life. The child clung to his leg. Tears ran down his face. The archivist crew stood frozen. They had dreamed, hoped, guessed. But now they saw it with their own eyes, more humans. Not one, but many. The vow was real. The captain whispered, "By the stars, they live." But the moment of joy did not last. The comms officer shouted from the ship above. "Hunters inbound. They tracked us. They know we are here." The crew rushed. They herded the survivors out of the shelter, fitting them with masks and blankets. Children cried softly. The rescued human held hands with two at once, refusing to let go. The archivists worked fast, lifting the weak, guiding the old. From the horizon, dust clouds rose. Engines growled. Hunter drones were closing in. "Faster," the captain barked. The crew reached the ship. Survivors stumbled inside. The hunters appeared, black machines with red eyes, crawling like insects. Their weapons glowed. Shots burned the ground around them. One of the archivists stripped, trapped under fallen stone. The crew tried to pull him free, but the stone was heavy. The hunters closed in. The rescued human dropped the children's hands, grabbed a piece of broken metal, and jammed it under the stone. His muscles shook, his arms screamed, but he pushed. He pushed harder than anyone thought possible. The stone shifted. The archivist was free. The engineer stared at him. No training. No armor. Just will. The captain pulled him up. This is why they cannot be left behind. They rushed into the ship. Engines roared. The hunters fired, striking the hull. Alarms screamed. The captain shouted for launch. The ship lifted, heavy with new weight, shaking under fire. Shields at 20%. Engines burning hot. Too many targets. The rescued human, gasping and pale, stumbled to the comms. He pressed buttons at random, then held the speaker to his mouth. He shouted one word in his own language, a word filled with fire and defiance. The hunters paused for a moment, confused, almost startled. The captain did not waste the chance. "Jump now." The ship tore into the sky, leaving fire and hunters behind. The stars swallowed them again. Silence fell inside. Survivors sobbed. Children clung to the archivists. The rescued human sat down hard, tears on his face, arms shaking from the effort. The captain looked at him. Then he looked at the others, the woman, the child, the tired faces. He raised his voice. "We saved more. The vow is alive. And we will not stop." The bridge fell quiet. The vow was no longer words on a page. It was breathing in front of them. Then, as the engines cooled, a new message blinked on the console. Not from the hunters. Not from the survivors. From something else. "You have awakened them." The lights flickered. The ship trembled. For a moment, every system went dark. The screen cut to black. A single heartbeat echoed. Words appeared. "Hope grows. But so does the danger." The ship floated in silence after the escape. The survivors filled the halls, thin, tired, but alive. The archivist crew gave them food, water, and blankets. Some children laughed softly, hearing the hum of the engines as if it were music. Others cried, afraid of the strange stars outside the window. The rescued human stayed close to them. He spoke in his own tongue, words the archivists could not understand, but they could hear the meaning in his voice. He told the survivors they were safe. He told them they were not alone anymore. The captain walked the halls, watching. He saw crew and survivors sitting together, sharing silence. He saw fear in their eyes, but also something else, hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope was powerful. It was the fire that the betrayer had feared, but it was also the only reason to go on. In the meeting room, the officers argued again. "We cannot protect them all," one said. "We have little fuel left. The hunters will return. More humans may still wait on other worlds," another said. "If we stop now, the vow dies." The captain listened, then raised his hand. "We made a promise. If one lives, we search for all. Now we have more than one. That promise cannot die here." The argument ended. Nobody had more words. Later, they counted their losses. The escort ship was gone, along with the brave crew who had stayed behind. The hull was scarred, and the engines were weak. They could not return home without risk. But the survivors' living proof of humanity's strength gave them courage. That night, the survivors gathered in the hall. They sang. The archivists did not know the song, but they listened. The voices were rough, broken by years of hiding, yet together they carried something powerful. The song filled the ship like a light. Some archivists cried quietly. Others closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them. The rescued human led the song. His voice was cracked but strong. He held the child's hand and sang louder than anyone else. The captain stood in the shadows and whispered, "This is why we cannot stop." But danger had not ended. The message still burned on the console, "You have awakened them." No one knew who had sent it, or what it meant. The engineer feared it meant more hunters. The historian feared it meant something older, something that had slept for centuries. The captain did not answer. He only stared at the stars. The next day, the survivors told what little they could through gestures and fragments of old language. They spoke of others hiding on distant colonies. Some signals had gone dark, but some might still shine. The archivists wrote every detail down, adding new marks to the map. The rescued human pointed at one of the coordinates. His fingers shook, his eyes full of fire. He spoke a word that none of them knew, but the crew understood his meaning, "Go there." The captain placed his hand on the map. He looked around the bridge. "We will go. Not because it is safe. Not because it is easy. But because it is right." The vow was no longer just in the book of the founders. It lived now in the faces of the survivors, in the voices of children, in the song that had filled the hall. The navigator plotted a new course. The stars ahead were dangerous coalition patrols, hunter fleets, broken systems with no fuel. But the captain's voice cut through the fear. "We are archivists. We keep memory. And now, we keep a promise. We will not stop until every name is answered." The rescued human stood beside him. He raised the scrap of paper he had carried since the beginning. The ink was fading, but the name was still there. He held it high, as if showing the universe itself. The captain nodded. "Yes," he said softly. "We will find them." The engines roared, slow but steady. The ship turned toward the new coordinates. Before the jump, the captain gave one final order: transmit a message. The comms officer asked, "To who?" The captain said, "To everyone listening. Friend, foe, or ghost." The message was simple. A voice carried across the stars. One was saved. Many remain. We will come for them all. On some distant worlds, the signal reached hidden ears. In broken shelters, in caves, in old bunkers, humans lifted their heads. Some wept, some laughed, some prayed. They had waited so long. Now, someone was coming. On other channels, enemies also listened. The coalition frowned. The hunters sharpened their blades. And in places no one had spoken of in centuries, something older stirred. The archivist ship leapt into the void, carrying survivors, carrying a vow, carrying fire. The final image, the ship rising through the dust, stars stretching before it. In the silence, A single heartbeat echoed, steady and strong. Words appeared across the dark. One saved. Many to go. The vow lives.